Alright, so welcome back. We are going to be continuing to work on this design. So we've got quite a bit of rendering work to do. What I would really like to do now is actually start a rendition of the house. So this looks a little crazy on its own, right? But that's because we have these different layers that are here. So we're going to start modifying this house, and we're going to start giving it some feeling of being real. So while we're doing that, I'm going to enable the shadows because it helps give a little bit more dimension, and we're going to shift the camera to perspective so it looks a little bit more realistic. So even with these two minor modifications, we're looking at something that feels a bit more real. So I'm going to get started here and bump this down because you can't have floating gaps, absolutely not. And we're going to get started on a simple roof structure. So I'm going to be approximating a lot of this. This does not need to be perfect. We're not concerned with the house. There is a solar component which we might install down the road, at which point we would be doing a completely different set of design protocol, and we would make the roof totally accurate. One thing I wish that I could actually get a hold of would be the original render drawing or any kind of modeling. That would be great. But, you know, c'est la vie. Don't need everything. I can do this myself. This does give us a little bit more wiggle room. In this software, you always want to group everything, otherwise it will 100% become a problem later, but you only learn that the hard way. So even just with one triangular shape, the roof already becomes quite a bit more lively. So next we're going to put in another section of the roof in here. So again, we're going to go vertical, and we'll say, man, this software sometimes just loves to mess with you. We'll do 15 feet. It's a little bit higher than it is in real life. So we're going to drop this down by 4 feet. Yep, that feels about right. So sometimes you get this weird phantom geography that will have to be fixed, but alas, we'll get to it soon enough. So we're going to continue expanding this portion of the roof. Again, what I'm going for right now is really not perfection. It's more what approximates the reality of the house in a way that's visually satisfying for the rest of the design. Because you don't want to have the project rendered and then not have a fairly realistic idea of what you're working with, right? Like that would be not ideal. So actually I have unfortunately detected a small mistake I made, so we will fix this. Not a big deal. Okay. And we've just fixed that. We're going to come back to this now and do a separate structure. So we're going to do a little bit of magic. So now the cool thing is this actually should be able to do what's called a follow me and essentially mirror this geometry of the semicircle. But we might have to there and then there. So now what we're going to attempt to do is actually mirror this curvature. It's a little bit tricky in this geometry, but it's fine, we'll get there. Now we will try the follow me again. Of course. Sometimes the software is extremely finicky. This is not that complicated, but see, now it wants to do the geometry once it expands outwards. This is why I love plants so much more than technology. This is what we want to happen, but on a smaller scale. So we do have another option, which is kind of ridiculous, but it will work. We just need this to be directly parallel. We're going to duplicate the geometry and then actually intersect it with the existing faces. And if you don't understand what that technical jargon means, that's fine. Essentially, we're going to be expanding this in a way that allows us to replicate the face and then create what we want by merging geometry that exists. And everything here is what's called geometry. So once we have this, we're going to essentially create a face like this, and we're going to intersect it. Right, so once we have this, we're going to make a clean cut. So for now, we don't need that. Now we need to just bring this to the top. Okay, now we can do what I just did a moment ago and create this face. So now we're going to intersect it with the context, and that should give us, well, it's not perfect because we wanted this to actually go inwards. So that is what we wanted for this to taper in. So we do have another option. I'm going to have to come back to this. This has proven to be a little bit more challenging than I had previously expected. But again, we're not going for perfection. We're just going for something that replicates. I'm going to have to figure that one out later. I'd rather get more modeling done at the moment. This is a little bit more important, again, than the perfection. So we'll continue along. Right, so got a lot of different geometry going on here. We're going to make something that, again, mostly approximate the house. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. It's beginning to feel a bit more tidied up, a bit more realistic. So we've got another swooping section to go here. This one will be about 7 feet. This is actually above the dining room. And then this section is a little bit different over here. So this is actually an elevated walkway, funnily enough. Not elevated walkway, excuse me, covered walkway. There's a bit of a wall here too. So we need to come this way and then go about 20, 25 feet, a bit less. That right there is actually just about exactly what we want. So there is a beautiful wall here. We're going to resume that. And I'm not sure, is that a shadow? Yeah, it is. Okay. It's bizarre how that geometry keeps appearing out of nowhere, but in any event, we're going to continue on. Okay, we're getting there now. Starting to feel quite a bit more realistic. Now we just have to essentially bridge this transition and make this whole roof feel complete. Easiest way to do that is just match this geometry, and we're going to use the pitch of this roof to essentially excuse me, once we have this, we have this convenient block which is going to get the final pitch. So we're going to do something that's a little bit inaccurate to the real house, but again, this is more demonstrative than actually totally realistic. Again, we're more concerned with how the property flows, because when we hop into the rendering software, let's actually update this. Boom. So now we have something that feels far more realistic. I'm going to add the colors here in a moment, but when we look at the house, okay, we're beginning to see the vision. It's not just something with the flat roof. So when this gets rendered, like now I'm using path tracing for real world illumination, and wow, it's a lot more realistic. If we go to the media, we can see some of the pictures that I've begun to set up. And you can see, I'm not sure, I knew I took more pictures. I don't know why. Let's just love when technology works flawlessly. Anyway, so one of the, for example, I'm going to export these as pictures. So we add this, and then we need to type in forest, and this will make the woods behind the house appear. So this helps create a much more realistic scene in which it's easier to see this and understand what's happening. So we're obviously going to update the textures so it feels a bit more realistic. That will come soon enough. Right now we're going to continue working on the roof. So we're going to keep getting all these shapes in until everything feels good enough as a representation. Again, we're not doing the architecture on this house, otherwise this would need to be perfect, but the house, again, is just a representation, and there's something kind of great about that where we're given a bit more freedom to represent, because this is more of a landscape project than an architectural drawing. I would like to do more architectural design work because I truly love that as well, but for now we're going to be fine doing this. And this is one of my favorite parts to do something, because whenever we make a component, it duplicates change across the entire structure. So when we make an array of this, divide by 4, we get about the real columns, and oops, they're not components. We need to make this a component first. Okay. Now it's perfectly in line. Divide by 4. Now we have them all again. Now, whenever we modify one, we modify all of them. So this is awesome. And then this has about a 6-inch sleeve. So now we're going to color this one, and we're going to give it a wood texture. Now, whenever I create a color in this software, what I like to do is actually modify the color and make it unique. So we're going to say wood pillar, and then slightly drop this, because that makes it a unique texture. So when we import it into our rendering model, it actually makes it easier to then color everything. So these are a little too far out. So we have two options. I'm going to do this. I'm going to just expand this by a slim margin, or would it be better? No, this needs to come out a bit. So this is going to be a little bit more faithful. So we'll do this. We'll go out about 2 more feet. This is a continuation of that same line. This line needs to go vertical. There we go. Excellent. goes that way, and then this one goes this way. Excellent. Okay. There. So now that is a roof shingle, but this one is actually a metal roof. So again, we're just using something that's going to be temporary. So we'll go here, and then it's kind of a darkish red, gray. Something around that. Boom. But I'm not totally happy with that. So let's modify that a bit more. We want this. Okay, so now we've got something that's a little bit more appropriate to the house. So again, if we look here, boom, we'll go back, we'll refresh, and now those pillars should be visible. Yep, there they are. So we have something that is a bit more faithful. And we're getting there. So one of the other things that needs to be done is actually modifying this orchard, because we're no longer going to be doing this exact structure. So a bunch of these trees are getting moved. So we need to go over here and expose the planned vegetation. And make this drop down, and then what we're going to do is refresh this, go back to this, and then this is the new layout. We need to get an aerial view. So we're going to cycle through this. Okay, here we go. Now this is perfectly top down, and we're just going to move these trees. So you can see we've got some here. This is the row where everything is being moved. Now, okay, now that everything is lined up perfectly, we're going to go back into this view and then drop them into place, because obviously now they're elevated. We don't have floating trees. Would be pretty cool. Maybe they've got that on the Artemis too. But for the time being, we're more concerned with these trees being actually integrated with the ground. Great. Okay. That fixes the orchard. Let's just hit a quick save. Never know when you need to save. And we can make those disappear again. So the other big tasks we want to take care of are the garden. Since we have been working on this render, we actually have in the real world created three separate trellises for these bamboo stakes, and they're quite large, cut down with locally grown bamboo, which is great, you know, deal with an invasive, and at the same time get an amazing resource. In China, they actually use, and much of Asia, they use bamboo as scaffolding, and from what I've seen in other countries in South America, they actually use native bamboo to have a lot of structures. They create structures out of bamboo. It's the native type there. It's really amazing. Okay. Great. So that's a little bit closer to where we are. I have to integrate the raised system here. We're going to move this worm bed. It no longer makes sense to keep here, given the nature of the bamboo in the structure. Okay, so it's really peculiar that we're getting the same issue before. Actually, better idea. Okay. Now I want to render the fence out here. Because this is part of a much, much bigger system that surrounds the entire property. We are just going to add a tiny little section of it for now. So first, let's get our base, and then well, the entire fence is about 8 feet high, so this need only be 3 feet higher. Right, here we are. So now what we want to do is trace out the actual fence line. So it has 3 posts. Each one is about 8 inches apart, and then there's 6-inch boards, so 6. We're going to group that. And then move up the bottom by 14 inches. And then do that twice. Now we've got our fence outline. And then we can actually push that out. But we're going to do 2 other things first. So now that this is grouped, okay, we just have to fix this, not a big deal. We have overlapping geometry here. There. Okay, so what we want to happen is the fence essentially to have 2 different layers, because one of them is going to be, I don't know why that's not working as it should. Oh, it's this line here. Okay. We have discovered the culprit. Not 8 inches. Or no, I said 6 inches, didn't I? No, 8. Okay, indeed. Right, 6-inch boards. All right. Sorry, that was minor inaccuracy for a moment. Now, when we go back in here, we can add this because we're going to have a textured fence in the back. So let's go ahead and add that now. This is going to be all black. I don't know why it's doing this. It should create a, there we go. I don't know why it didn't do that before. I really swear this software has some kind of crazy bias against me. It's just, I do something and it should work completely normally and then it decides to not work normally. It's quite frustrating. Again, like, okay. So we want this to be 2 inches. Same deal. And this one actually needs to be renamed. Okay, so what are we looking at? The beginning of that fence. So now we just need to hop back over here, paint the other side of this one, and we'll add the post, but this fence goes around the entire property. So if you remember what I said earlier about components, it allows you to create one entity and then reflect change amongst every other instance of that entity. We're not going to be doing that with these because there's going to be a lot of shifting in the terrain, but this will allow us to get started. Now we just need to add the post. So again, we're going to make a group, except this time we're going to be doing 4x4s here. We're going to use that same wood texture that we just made. We're going to make this, did it not? Okay. And this is going to go this high. Okay, so now we move this here. And we're going to divide by 5, which seems about right. And then because we need to support this netting on top, we're going to add a spoke in the back. Okay, there. Now we've got the back of the fence in, so that feels a lot more realistic. Then we're going to take this entire group and move it from here to right here. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. And we're duplicating this as we move it. Okay, now we've got 1/30 of the fence in, if that, right? So we've got about 75 feet of fence. It's a fraction of the perimeter of the property, of which the entirety, this is actually closed in. But we can see there are some gaps in the land. This is why I did not want to make these a component. We're going to do a bit of a little visual trick here. Again, this is more representative. This is not critical to the design so much as it is representative. So as long as this is pretty close, then we can come back and adjust the landscape later. There. And whenever we have, actually, we're going to do a little bit better. So whenever we have a fence in this situation, if it's not quite angled right, then what we can do is extend the post so they go through the ground. So that looks a bit better, right? But obviously it's floating, so nevertheless we go to this component. Again, this is why it's so excellent. And then we punch it through the ground. And now everything should be sticking through the ground, precisely. And we don't lose the, excuse me, direction of the wood, because it's critical that that still looks intact. So if we do that to the other side, which obviously we will need to do, right, so we go here, same process. And I won't torture you with the entire process for the entire fence. That would be overkill. But this one, I'm going to have to raise the terrain a bit more because the ground should be higher in this area anyway. The topography was not totally accurate. I'm going to have to modify this myself. Same over here where everything's a bit floating. But again, right now we're just getting more of the point across. I'm going to be doing the entire fence line, so that will take a bit of work. But let's actually hop over here and just get some of this painted. Again, we made that metal texture in it for whatever reason. Did not. Like, why did it just make that? It makes no sense. I don't understand why it did that. The texture should be intact. This is the kind of thing I have to complain about it for it to actually. Okay, fine. Right? This is not how the roof actually looks. This is simply representative. Once again, it's kind of in my catchphrase. We're going to come back and texture everything properly. This one actually has a different roof. That's one of the cool things about this house. You can see it's got different levels and different layers and textures. Right now, obviously, it's missing, excuse me, all the things that make it homely, like lights and windows. So we're going to add a bunch of those next. I don't know what the heck is going on, man. I'm not sure why. The store is not working. It's quite frustrating. Normally when you punch through geometry like this, oh, what do you know? It removes the entity, but of course this is not working. I'm going to have to come through and deal with a lot of these troubleshooting steps myself, but that will be done later. For right now, whatever, we'll just paint this door with some wood, and that'll be good for the moment. Obviously, we'll come back and fix that later. So, excuse me. Now, when we are in a situation like this, we actually are going to do something a little bit we're going to create some windows in this bay, and first we have to do something a little bit tedious, which is select all of these edges. I'm not sure why that just did that, but all right, well, honestly, it's fine. Okay, now what I want to do is create, wow, that is not, okay, that's very bizarre, but nevertheless, we're going to continue on and do a 0.25 quarter-inch. God. Okay. Right, so even just giving the bay window those outlines has created a lot more structure, but we're going to do something a bit different. I'm going to make these all a group. And we're going to go to the extensions and use Oh, I need to install it quickly. I'll do that later. I have to go through my files to get it. But we're going to run a program to essentially add windows to all of these. What it does is it creates automatic windows essentially. So not sure why that is absolutely brilliant how it's right. So that obviously is showing you inside. You can't really see anything. We're not going to worry about that at the moment. More important thing is that now we have a semblance of windows in the bay, and we're going to be continuing that elsewhere. So this is a good stopping point for the moment. I have to head out pretty soon, but I just wanted to make some progress on defining the roof and then the garden area. We have a lot more work to do here, and then of course we have a ton of work to do in the planting area as well. So we have begun implementing the design. God, that's frustrating when the textures don't line up. Much better. So we've got cool weather crops. We're going to have tomatoes going in here and cucumbers there, and we've got a bunch of perennial vegetables. So I've got a lot more design work to do. I've got to do these gates, but yeah, and the fence looks good. The only problem is this texture does not replicate very well here. It actually has to be expanded, but that's some technical stuff that's not relevant at the moment. But you can begin to see how even with just a couple more details, now it really begins to feel a lot more alive. We still have to add a lot more of the elements over here, the barn, the chicken coop, so on and so forth. And then we have to expand the fence, but for the initial onset of the fence, that's a decent effort, and we're going to continue with the house. And I do need to put these ornamental trees in. There are a couple. Let's see. So they're flowering trees. They are actually, they actually just flowered in real life, not even a week ago. So they're not crepe myrtles. They're something different. But wow, are they beautiful, right? So I don't think this one actually has dogwood, which is a native tree to Virginia, one of my all-time favorites. It's actually our state tree too. So we're going to keep these in, make them a bit bigger because these trees are a bit more mature. Right, and the great thing about the software is whenever you actually add plant life in, it makes the rest of the details of the house look much more defined, which is very convenient because obviously we're looking at a massive collection of geometry. And even though things are beginning to get painted and fill in a bit, you can still gather how this is the house, right? So yes, anyway, we've made some good progress today. Thank you to everyone who watched. There's a lot more coming. I'm probably going to spend the next hour of this just plowing through some of the more boring aspects and just fixing a couple things so that everything is a bit more enjoyable for the viewer. But thank you so much for checking in. This is a current project, and I've been posting content about it on my Instagram, so follow along there. And comment guide if you want me to send you a guide on how to get started with some financial strategies for your property to take the most advantage out of your land from government programs. So thank you again, and until the next stream.